I've finally arrived at the cabin, deep in the Alaskan interior, far from any town or road or sign of human civilization. The journey here took the better part of a day, first by a small bush plane that lifted off from Fairbanks in the early afternoon, flying over endless stretches of snow-covered forest. Then a landing on a frozen lake, the skis of the plane touching down on ice that's been solid since November and won't thaw until May. And finally, a trek through the winter forest with just a headlamp and the stars to guide me, following markers left by previous visitors, trusting that each ribbon tied to a tree branch would lead to the next. But now, standing here in front of this small log structure, surrounded by the profound silence of the boreal forest in winter, I know every step was worth it. Every moment of planning, every dollar spent, every concern about the cold, all of it fades away in the presence of this place. The silence is the first thing that strikes me. It's not the absence of sound, it's something far more substantial than that. It's a presence all its own, a quality of quietness that exists in very few places on Earth anymore. The kind of silence that makes you aware of your own heartbeat, your own breathing, the blood moving through your veins. The kind that has weight and texture and depth. In this silence, I can hear my eyelids blink. I can hear my jacket rustling with each breath. Every small sound is amplified because there's nothing to compete with it, nothing to mask it. The temperature is well below freezing. My phone, tucked in an inner pocket for warmth, read -25 degrees Fahrenheit when I last checked, about half a mile back. That's cold enough to freeze exposed skin in minutes, cold enough that your breath crystallizes and falls to the ground like tiny diamonds, cold enough that the snow squeaks and crunches under your boots with a distinctive sound that only happens at these temperatures. But the cold here is different from the cold I've experienced elsewhere. There's no moisture in it, no wind to drive it through your layers. It's a dry, still cold that feels almost pure. The air itself seems clearer, more transparent. Stars that would be faint dots in warmer climates shine with knife-edge sharpness here. Colors seem more saturated. Everything feels defined and precise, as if the cold has stripped away all ambiguity. My breath forms clouds that hang in the still air for long moments before slowly dissipating. Each exhale creates this temporary sculpture of vapor, visible evidence of the warmth my body is generating, the life I'm carrying in this frozen landscape. I watch one breath cloud drift slowly away, catching starlight, before it finally dissolves into the Arctic night. Snow covers everything in a thick blanket that transforms the landscape into something from a fairy tale. But this isn't the wet, heavy snow of lower latitudes that clumps and packs. This is dry powder that sparkles in the starlight like crushed diamonds scattered across velvet. It's the kind of snow that squeaks when you walk on it, that stays light and fluffy for months, that indigenous peoples have dozens of different words for because each type of snow has its own characteristics, its own behaviors, its own uses. The snow depth varies with the terrain. In the clearing where the cabin stands, it's perhaps 2 feet deep, fairly uniform. But where the wind has been able to work, drifts have formed against trees and rises in the land, some of them 4 or 5 feet tall. And in the shelter of the thick spruce forest that surrounds the clearing, the snow is shallower, much of it caught by the branches above before it could reach the ground. The cabin itself is simple but sturdy. Built from logs decades ago by someone who understood this environment intimately, who knew how to create shelter that could withstand the long Arctic winter. The wood has weathered to a beautiful silver gray, and snow has drifted against the north side, creating a natural insulation that will help keep heat inside. The roof is steeply pitched to shed snow, and I can see where previous visitors have cleared accumulation from around the door and windows. There's a small porch, really just a platform, where firewood is stacked under a tarp. Someone, maybe the last visitor, maybe the cabin's owner, has left split wood ready to use, along with kindling and even some birch bark, which burns hot and fast and is perfect for starting fires. This is the tradition of these remote cabins. You leave it better than you found it. You prepare it for the next person. You maintain this chain of wilderness hospitality that might, someday, save someone's life. I brush snow from the door with my gloved hand, watching it cascade down in a small avalanche of powder. The key is in my pocket, and I fish it out, my fingers clumsy in the heavy gloves. The lock is stiff with cold, metal contracts in these temperatures, and everything mechanical becomes more difficult. But I work the key patiently, not forcing it, and finally feel it turn. The hinges protest slightly as the door swings open, cold metal moving against cold metal, both contracted and resistant. The sound is sharp in the profound silence, and I pause for just a moment before stepping inside, taking one last look at the night sky. Already I can see more stars than most people see in a lifetime. Already I can sense something building on the northern horizon, a faint glow that might be the beginning of what I came here to see. But first, warmth. First, shelter. First, the ancient human ritual of creating a safe space in the wilderness. I step across the threshold, stomping my boots on the wooden floor to dislodge clinging snow. Even this simple action feels significant, crossing from outside to inside, from cold to the promise of warmth, from exposure to shelter. The cabin is dark, and I can sense more than see the space around me. Small. Efficient. Everything in its place, because in the Arctic winter, disorganization can be dangerous. My headlamp beam cuts through the darkness as I unshoulder my pack, feeling the weight lift from my shoulders with relief. The pack isn't extremely heavy, perhaps 35 pounds, but I've been carrying it for over an hour through snow, and my shoulders are grateful for the respite. I set it carefully on the floor, hearing the solid thump of it landing, the small sounds of the contents settling. Now I can survey the space properly. The cabin is a single room, maybe 15 feet by 12 feet. Efficient use of every square foot. In one corner, a wood stove dominates, a beautiful old cast iron piece, solid and reliable, the kind that was made to last generations. It's a barrel stove, simple in design but effective, with a pipe that rises straight up through the roof. Near the stove, a cot with a mattress and folded blankets. Simple but sufficient. Against one wall, a small counter serves as a kitchen, a camping stove, some pots and pans hanging from nails, shelves with supplies. Dried goods, mostly. Rice, pasta, oatmeal, tea, coffee. Previous visitors have left some items, following the custom. I've brought my own food, but it's comforting to know there are reserves here, just in case. In the wilderness, redundancy in critical supplies isn't paranoia, it's wisdom. A small table sits under the window that faces north. One chair. A kerosene lantern sits on the table, and I can see a small can of fuel next to it. On the wall, hooks for hanging clothes. On a shelf, matches in a waterproof container, candles, a first aid kit, a logbook where visitors record their stays and observations. Everything speaks of practicality and care. This cabin has been well maintained. Someone, or more likely many someones over the years, has invested time and effort into keeping it functional. In places like this, that maintenance is an act of generosity, a gift to future travelers, an acknowledgement that we're all part of something larger than ourselves. I immediately begin the ritual of creating warmth. In the Arctic winter, cold is the primary adversary. Food, water, shelter, all of these are important, but warmth is foundational. Without it, nothing else matters. So the wood stove becomes the first priority, the central focus, the heart of the cabin. The firebox is clean, the last visitor swept out the ashes. I open the door and peer inside with my headlamp. Good. The flue is open. The air intake is adjustable. Everything is ready. I arrange kindling in the firebox, starting with the finest pieces at the bottom. Thin twigs that will catch easily. Above them, slightly larger pieces. Then small splits of wood. Finally, a couple of larger pieces that will catch once the smaller wood is burning well. I add pieces of birch bark at strategic points. Birch bark is a gift from the boreal forest. It contains oils that make it burn even when wet, and it catches fire quickly, creating hot flames that will ignite the wood around it. The indigenous peoples of this region have used birch bark for countless purposes, making baskets, canoes, even as paper for recording information. But for fire starting, it's nearly perfect. A match strikes, and the small flame seems impossibly bright in the darkness. I hold it to the birch bark, which catches almost immediately, curling and blackening as it burns with a bright, hot flame. The kindling begins to smoke, then catches. Small flames spread. I crouch low and blow gently, feeding the fire oxygen, watching as it grows. Fire is perhaps humanity's oldest technology. We've been tending fires for hundreds of thousands of years, and doing it here, in this remote cabin in the Alaskan wilderness, feels like participating in that ancient tradition. My ancestors, wherever they lived, whatever their culture, all knew how to make fire. All understood its importance. All gathered around it for warmth and light and the sense of safety it provides. The fire takes hold, crackling now, spreading to the larger pieces of wood. I adjust the air intake, not too much or the fire will burn too fast, not too little or it will die. Just right. Finding that balance. Within minutes, I can feel the first hints of warmth beginning to radiate from the stove. Not much yet, but the promise of it. The beginning of transformation from cold to warm, from harsh to comfortable. While the cabin begins its slow warming, I light the kerosene lantern. The process is familiar. Remove the glass chimney, trim the wick slightly if needed, strike a match, light the wick, adjust it until the flame burns steady and clean, replace the chimney. The soft golden glow fills the space, revealing details my headlamp missed or rendered harsh. And suddenly the cabin feels different. Light transforms space. What was dark and slightly forbidding becomes cozy and inviting. Shadows dance on the log walls. The wood grain becomes visible, rich and varied. The space becomes a home, however temporary. I organize my gear methodically, following the habits ingrained by years of wilderness travel. Everything has its place. Everything should be accessible. In cold weather especially, organization isn't just convenience, it's safety. If you need something urgently, a headlamp, extra gloves, a lighter, you need to know exactly where it is. My sleeping bag gets unrolled on the cot. It's rated to -30 degrees Fahrenheit, filled with high-quality down that will trap body heat efficiently. I fluff it slightly, letting the down expand to its full loft, which is when it insulates best. The sleeping pad underneath provides crucial insulation from below. Even with the cabin warming, the cold will try to leach up through any contact with surfaces, and the pad creates a thermal barrier. Extra clothing gets laid out where I can reach it easily. Thermal underwear, fleece layers, a down vest, extra wool socks. The layering system that allows humans to survive in environments we're not naturally adapted for. Each layer traps air, and air is an excellent insulator. Staying warm in extreme cold is about creating multiple layers of trapped air between your body and the exterior environment. My water bottles get placed near the stove where they won't freeze. Water management in winter requires constant attention. Liquid water is precious. If your water freezes solid, you'll have to melt it using fuel, and fuel is limited. So you keep water close to heat sources, you sleep with water bottles in your sleeping bag, you drink regularly to stay hydrated even when you're not feeling particularly thirsty. The cabin is warming noticeably now. The stove is humming with heat, the fire well established. I can remove my heavy parka and hang it on one of the wall hooks. Underneath, I'm wearing a down vest over a fleece jacket over a long-sleeve merino wool base layer. Even without the parka, I'm comfortable. The cabin temperature is probably approaching 50 degrees, which feels positively tropical after the -25 outside. I pour hot tea from my thermos into a metal cup. I prepared it before leaving the bush plain, knowing I'd want something warm when I arrived. The steam rises in the lantern light, carrying the scent of herbs and honey. Wrapping my hands around the cup, I feel the warmth seep into my fingers, which are still slightly cold despite the gloves I was wearing. The first sip is perfect, hot but not scalding, sweet but not too sweet, exactly what my body needs after the cold hike. With the immediate needs addressed, fire, light, basic organization, I can turn my attention to why I'm really here. I walk to the window that faces north. It's small, perhaps 2 feet by 3 feet, double pane for insulation. During the day, I imagine it provides a pleasant view of the forest. But now, at night, it's a frame for the sky. And what I see makes me catch my breath. The forest stretches out in the starlight, a sea of black spruce trees whose silhouettes are sharp against the snow. The trees here are adapted to the extreme cold, to the short growing season, to the permafrost beneath the soil. They're shorter than spruce at lower latitudes, their growth stunted by the harsh conditions, but they're survivors. They've found a way to thrive in one of Earth's most challenging environments. Beyond the trees, the land rises slightly to a ridge perhaps half a mile away. I can see the ridge's outline against the sky, a gentle elevation that will provide an unobstructed view of the northern horizon. And above that ridge, the sky is beginning to change. It's subtle at first. If I weren't watching specifically for it, I might miss it entirely. Just a faint brightening along the northern horizon, barely distinguishable from the natural glow of the Milky Way. But I've seen enough photographs, read enough accounts, to recognize what I'm witnessing. The aurora is waking up. The band of light is pale green, diffuse, like luminous fog hovering above the horizon. It's steady at first, not moving, just present. But even as I watch, it begins to intensify. The green deepens slightly. The band becomes more defined. And then I see the first hint of structure within it. Vertical rays begin to appear, faint but definitely there, like searchlights pointing upward into the darkness. My heart rate increases. Not from fear or stress, but from anticipation. From the realization that what I came here to see, what I've traveled thousands of miles to witness, is beginning. The Aurora borealis, the northern lights, is performing. And I have a front row seat. I know I should go outside to see this properly. The window offers only a limited view, constrained by its frame. The aurora demands to be witnessed fully, under open sky, with nothing between you and its dance except the thin atmosphere itself. It deserves to be seen in its entirety, in its full context of stars and forest and frozen land. But I also know that going outside requires preparation. The -25-degree temperature doesn't forgive carelessness. So I layer up again, methodically. The heavy parka goes back on, its down filling providing crucial insulation. A wool hat, the kind that covers my ears completely. Thick gloves designed for extreme cold, with liners that can be worn alone for tasks requiring dexterity. A neck gaiter that I can pull up over my mouth and nose if needed. Boots that are rated for Arctic conditions, with thick insulation and waterproof exteriors. Each item is essential. Each item is the result of decades or even centuries of refinement. Humans have been figuring out how to stay warm in extreme cold for as long as we've lived in these latitudes, and the gear I'm wearing represents the accumulated wisdom of that long experience, enhanced by modern materials and manufacturing. Before stepping outside, I add 2 more pieces of wood to the stove, ensuring it will continue burning steadily while I'm gone. The cabin will stay warm. When I return, cold and ready to settle in for the evening, it will be a welcoming refuge. I pick up my headlamp but don't turn it on. My eyes have adjusted to the lantern's dim light, and I want to preserve my night vision. Outside, in the darkness under the stars, fully adapted eyes will see so much more. The human eye can be remarkably sensitive in low light conditions, but only if you give it time to adjust and avoid bright light sources. Opening the door, I step back into the night. The cold hits my face like a physical force, sharp and immediate. The contrast between the cabin's interior and the exterior is dramatic, probably 70 degrees or more. My body registers the shock, and I feel my breathing quicken momentarily before I consciously slow it, establishing a steady rhythm. The door closes behind me with a solid sound. I'm outside now, alone in the Alaskan wilderness, under a sky that's beginning to come alive with one of nature's most spectacular displays. I walk away from the cabin, moving slowly and deliberately through the snow. Each step sinks slightly before finding solid support underneath. The snow here is about 18 inches deep, maybe a bit more where it's drifted. My boots, with their wide profile designed to provide flotation in snow, keep me from sinking too deeply, but there's still that characteristic crunch with each step. The sound of my boots in the snow is impossibly loud in this profound silence. Crunch. Pause. Crunch. Pause. Each step seems to echo, though of course it doesn't. There's nothing nearby to create echoes. But in this quietness, the absence of other sounds makes every small noise feel amplified, significant. I move perhaps 50 yards from the cabin, far enough that its shape doesn't intrude significantly on my view of the northern horizon. There's a small clearing here where the spruce trees open up, creating natural theater for what's about to happen. The snow in the clearing is pristine, undisturbed except for my tracks. No animal tracks visible, though I know animals are here. Snowshoe hares that turn white in winter. Lynx that hunt them. Maybe wolves, ranging far in search of moose or caribou. Certainly small mammals, voles and shrews that burrow beneath the snow, creating entire tunnel systems in the space between the snow surface and the ground. I stop walking and stand still, just existing in this space for a moment. Breathing. Feeling the cold on my face. Smelling the clean scent of frozen air and spruce. Being present with this environment that is so utterly different from most human experience in the modern world. And then I look north, and my breath catches. The Aurora has transformed. What was a faint band just minutes ago is now unmistakable, undeniable. A curtain of pale green light stretches across the entire northern horizon, from northwest to northeast. It's perhaps 20 or 30 degrees above the horizon at its highest point, arcing across the sky like a luminous rainbow. But unlike a rainbow, this curtain is moving. Not quickly, nothing dramatic or sudden, but definitely shifting. The vertical rays that I saw beginning earlier are now clearly defined, and they're waving back and forth like actual curtains in a gentle breeze. New sections brighten while others fade. The intensity fluctuates. It's alive in a way that's difficult to describe to someone who hasn't witnessed it. The Aurora has motion, has rhythm, has what almost seems like intention. I know the science behind this phenomenon. I've read about it, studied it, tried to understand the physics involved. High above me, in the thermosphere and exosphere. Regions of the atmosphere so thin that the concept of air barely applies, particles from the sun are colliding with oxygen and nitrogen atoms. The solar wind, a constant stream of charged particles emanating from our star, reaches Earth after traveling 93 million miles through space. Most of this wind is deflected by Earth's magnetic field, that invisible shield that protects us from the harsh environment of space. But near the poles, the magnetic field lines converge, channeling some of these particles downward into the upper atmosphere. When a high-energy particle from the sun strikes an atom of oxygen or nitrogen, it can knock an electron to a higher energy level. The atom becomes excited, in the terminology of physics. But this excited state is unstable. The electron falls back to its normal energy level, and when it does, it releases the extra energy as a photon of light. That photon is what I'm seeing. Billions upon billions of these interactions, happening continuously in a region of atmosphere tens or hundreds of miles above my head, creating this magnificent display. The colors depend on which atoms are involved and at what altitude the collisions occur. The green that dominates most auroras, the green I'm seeing now, comes from oxygen atoms at altitudes between about 60 and 150 miles. It's the oxygen's characteristic emission when its electrons return from one particular excited state. If the oxygen is at higher altitudes, where collisions are less frequent, a different transition can occur, producing the rarer red aurora. Nitrogen produces blue and purple hues. Each color is a signature, telling observers something about what's happening in that impossibly distant, impossibly thin region where space and atmosphere blur together. But knowing the science doesn't diminish the wonder. If anything, it enhances it. Understanding that I'm watching the sun interact with Earth's magnetic field, that I'm seeing visible evidence of space weather, that this light has traveled so far and arises from processes so fundamental, it's profound. The aurora is a reminder that we live on a planet in space, that we're constantly bathed in radiation from our star, that our world has defenses that protect us while creating beauty in the process. The aurora is intensifying as I watch. The pale green is now brilliant, almost electric in its luminosity. The vertical rays have multiplied, creating what looks like a fence of light stretching across the northern sky. Each ray reaches upward from the horizon, extending maybe 20 or 30 degrees toward the zenith before fading. And now I'm beginning to see movement at the tops of the rays. They're starting to fold, to twist, to dance. This is one of the aurora's most mesmerizing characteristics. The motion isn't random. There are patterns, rhythms, almost like choreography. Rays wave back and forth. Curtains ripple. Sometimes the aurora seems to pulse, brightening and dimming in waves that travel along its length. It's responding to fluctuations in the solar wind, to changes in Earth's magnetosphere, to complex interactions between magnetic fields and plasma that scientists are still working to fully understand. I think about the indigenous peoples who've lived in this region for thousands of years. The Alaskan tribes, whose traditional territories include much of interior Alaska. The Inupiat of the northern coast. The Yupik of the western regions. Each group had their own names for the aurora, their own stories about its meaning and origin. To the Athabascan peoples, the aurora was often seen as spirits. Some groups believed they were the spirits of animals, particularly of salmon, running in rivers in the sky. Others thought they were the spirits of human ancestors, dancing and playing. Some believed the aurora could hear and respond to human actions. There were taboos associated with it. Don't whistle at the aurora. Don't draw its attention. Treat it with respect, even fear. These teachings served practical purposes. They encouraged people to stay focused during the dark winter nights, to avoid unnecessary risks, to maintain awareness that the Arctic environment, beautiful as it is, demands respect. Other indigenous groups had different interpretations. The Inuit have numerous stories. In some versions, the aurora is spirits playing a ball game with a walrus skull. When the lights move quickly and intensely, the game has become competitive and exciting. In other stories, the lights are torches held by spirits guiding the souls of the recently deceased to the afterlife. Still other traditions see the aurora as dangerous, as something that could sweep down and carry away the unwary. What strikes me about all these interpretations is how they reflect deep observation of the natural world combined with cultural frameworks that provided meaning and context. These weren't primitive people failing to understand a natural phenomenon. These were sophisticated cultures with complex spiritual and practical understanding of their environment, creating narratives that acknowledged mystery while providing guidance for living in one of Earth's most challenging regions. The aurora has evolved again as I've been standing here, lost in thought. Multiple bands are now visible, stacked at different heights in the atmosphere. They move independently but somehow remain coordinated, creating a visual harmony. It's like watching an orchestra where different sections play their parts, each following its own score, but all contributing to a unified whole. The dominant color remains that brilliant green, but now I'm seeing variations within it. Some sections are more yellow-green, others more blue-green. And there, at the very top of the tallest rays, barely visible but definitely present, a hint of red. That high-altitude oxygen, excited to an even higher energy state, producing a color that's much rarer than the green below it. And yes, there, a brief flash of purple near the horizon. Nitrogen making its contribution. It appears and vanishes in seconds, but I saw it. Each color is a gift, a variation in the aurora's palette, telling a story about atmospheric chemistry and energy levels and the complex dance of particles and fields. The cold is seeping through my layers now. Not dangerously. I'm properly dressed and aware of my body's condition, but noticeably. My toes are starting to feel the chill despite the insulated boots. My fingers, even in their heavy gloves, are cooling. My face, my cheeks, my nose, are cold to the point of slight pain. This is the Arctic's gentle reminder that I'm a visitor here, tolerated but not native. This landscape belongs to the animals and plants that have adapted to it over millennia. I'm here by virtue of technology and clothing and fire, not by natural adaptation. But I'm not ready to go inside yet. The aurora is too magnificent. Each moment brings new patterns, new configurations. To leave now would be to miss something extraordinary. So I accept the cold, acknowledge it, and continue watching. A satellite passes overhead, a steady point of light moving against the fixed stars. It travels west to east, probably in a polar or sun-synchronous orbit. There are thousands of satellites up there now, circling the Earth, performing countless functions. Communication, navigation, weather observation, Earth science, military surveillance. They're humanity's presence in space, our first tentative steps beyond our home planet. The satellite moves out of view, and my attention returns to the aurora. It's changing again, always changing. The neat bands are beginning to break up, becoming more chaotic, more dynamic. This is the transition toward what aurora chasers call a substorm or breakup, when the structured forms suddenly explode into rapid motion. And then it happens. The aurora suddenly intensifies dramatically. What was already bright becomes dazzling. The green light is now so intense that it's casting actual shadows on the snow around me. I can see my shadow, faint but definite, stretching across the snow. The trees are throwing shadows. There's enough light from the aurora to see colors, the dark green of the spruce needles, the brown of the tree trunks, the blue-white of the snow. The motion increases proportionally. The curtains are now waving rapidly, folding and unfolding like fabric in a strong wind. New structures appear constantly, curls and spirals and waves. The aurora has spread from its original position on the northern horizon to fill much of the sky above me. I turn in a slow circle, and everywhere I look, north, east, west, even south, there are traces of green light. This is the breakup event. This is the climax of the Aurora display, when all the energy that's been building in the magnetosphere is suddenly released. It's spectacular, overwhelming, almost too much to process. My brain struggles to take in all the motion, all the light, all the constantly shifting patterns. I realize my heart rate has increased significantly. Not from fear, but from pure awe. From the overwhelming beauty of what I'm witnessing. This is one of Earth's great spectacles, one of the shows that nature puts on in only a few places on the planet. And I'm here. I'm present for it. I'm one of maybe a few dozen or a few hundred people on the entire planet seeing this particular display at this particular moment. The intensity holds for several minutes, though time has become slippery. Then, gradually, the aurora begins to ease. The rapid motion slows. The intensity dims slightly, though the aurora remains strong. It's like watching a symphony reach its crescendo and then settle back into a quieter movement. The energy hasn't disappeared, it's still there, still visible, but the character has changed from dramatic to contemplative. I notice I've been holding my breath, and I release it slowly, watching the cloud of vapor drift away in the still air. My hands are shaking slightly, and I'm not sure if it's from the cold or from the emotional impact of what I just witnessed. Probably both. The aurora continues, but in this gentler mode. The curtains wave slowly now. New structures appear and fade at a more relaxed pace. It's beautiful in a different way, less overwhelming, more meditative. And I'm definitely cold now. My body is sending clear signals. Time to return to the warmth of the cabin. Not to hide from the aurora, but to witness it in comfort. The window faces north specifically so that visitors can watch the lights from inside, warm and safe. I'll make tea, tend the fire, and watch the aurora continue its ancient dance. Back inside, the warmth envelopes me like an embrace from an old friend. The temperature difference between outside and inside is profound, easily 70 or 80 degrees. My body registers the transition immediately. My face begins to tingle as sensation returns to my cold numb skin. My fingers, stiff in their gloves, start to regain flexibility. Even through all my layers, I can feel the cabin's warmth seeping in, chasing away the deep chill that was beginning to settle into my core. I remove the heavy parka first, feeling the weight lift from my shoulders. Then the gloves, placing them near the stove where they'll dry if they've accumulated any moisture. The hat comes off, and I can feel where it's compressed my hair. Each layer removed is a small relief, a return to comfort. The wood stove is still going strong, exactly as I'd hoped. The logs I added before going outside have burned down substantially, so I add more, 2 good-sized pieces that will burn for a couple of hours. I adjust the air intake carefully, finding that balance between too much air, which would make the fire burn too hot and consume wood too quickly, and too little, which would let it die down too much. The fire responds, flames wrapping around the new wood, finding the dry interior beneath the bark. Within moments, the crackling increases. The stove radiates heat in waves that I can feel on my still cold face. I hold my hands out toward the stove, palms open, letting the warmth soak into them. The contrast between the bone-deep cold of my fingers and the radiant heat of the stove creates this almost painful tingling, but it's the good kind of pain, the kind that tells you everything is functioning properly, blood flowing, nerves responding. While my hands warm, I prepare fresh tea. There's a small propane camp stove on the counter, and I light it with a match. The blue flame springs to life, steady and controlled. I fill a small pot with water from one of my bottles. The water is cold but not frozen, thanks to its time near the wood stove. Setting the pot on the burner, I wait for it to heat. While waiting, I walk to the window. And immediately, I'm rewarded. The aurora has evolved yet again. The dramatic breakup event has passed, but the lights remain strong. Now there's a different configuration, broad arcs of green light stretching across the northern sky, rising from the horizon and extending upward. They're steadier than during the breakup, but still in motion. The arcs ripple slowly, like flags in a gentle breeze. New sections brighten while others fade, creating a traveling wave effect that's hypnotic to watch. The stars are incredible behind and between the aurora. The Milky Way cuts across the sky like a river of light, our galaxies plain visible from our position within it. I can make out familiar constellations. Ursa Major, the Great Bear, with the Big Dipper forming its hindquarters and tail. Following the pointer stars at the end of the Dipper leads to Polaris, the North Star, positioned almost directly north because we're at a high latitude. Cassiopeia, that distinctive W shape, sits on the opposite side of Polaris from the Big Dipper, the two constellations circumpolar at this latitude, never setting, just endlessly circling the pole. The aurora is painting the snow outside with its green glow. The spruce trees, dark silhouettes during the day, are now tinged with that ethereal color. The entire landscape has been transformed into something from a dream, something between reality and fantasy. If I didn't know the science, if I didn't understand the physics, it would be easy to believe in magic, in spirits, in otherworldly forces at play. Behind me, the water begins to boil, the pot rattling slightly on the burner. I turn away from the aurora reluctantly and prepare my tea. I've brought a herbal blend, chamomile, mint, a touch of valerian root for relaxation. No caffeine. I want to be able to sleep later, once the aurora has faded or I've simply seen enough. The hot water pours over the tea bag in my metal cup, and immediately the steam rises, carrying the familiar scent. I add a spoonful of honey from the cabin's supplies, watching it dissolve in the hot liquid. The sweetness will provide a little energy, and honey in tea is one of those simple pleasures that feels especially good in the wilderness. There's something about the combination of hot liquid, sweet flavor, and aromatic steam that's deeply comforting. Cup in hand, I return to the window. But this time, I move the chair over, positioning it for the best view. Then I settle in, pulling one of the wool blankets from the cot and draping it over my lap. The chair is simple wood, not particularly comfortable by modern standards, but adequate. And right now, with the fire warming the cabin, the tea warming my hands, and the aurora dancing outside, I can't imagine being more comfortable anywhere else. I sip the tea slowly, feeling the warmth spread through me from the inside out. My body is recovering from the cold exposure, finding equilibrium. My fingers have regained full sensation. My face no longer tingles. Even my toes, which were the coldest, are warming up in my thick wool socks. The aurora continues its slow dance. I notice patterns now that I didn't see during the more dramatic phase. The way certain sections seem to pulse in rhythm. The way waves of brightness travel along the arcs. The way the green sometimes shifts toward yellow, sometimes toward blue, depending on subtle variations in the energy and altitude of the particle collisions creating it. I think more about the history of aurora observation and understanding. For most of human history, the aurora was a mystery. People could observe it, could recognize patterns in when and where it appeared, but couldn't explain it. The best they could do was create stories that fit within their cultural frameworks. The Norse, seafaring people who ventured into northern waters, called it the Bifrost, a bridge between Earth and Asgard, the realm of the gods. They also associated Aurora with the Valkyries, those mythological warrior women who chose who would die in battle and escorted the bravest to Valhalla. According to some Norse accounts, the Aurora was light reflecting off the Valkyries' shields and armor as they rode across the sky. The Sami people of northern Scandinavia had a more fearful view. They believed the Aurora was dangerous, that you should be quiet and respectful when it appeared. Children were taught not to whistle, wave, or shout at the lights, because doing so might cause the aurora to come down and carry them away. Some Sami legends spoke of the aurora as the souls of the dead, and disturbing them was considered disrespectful and dangerous. In medieval Europe, aurora sightings were often interpreted as omens. A particularly bright aurora visible at lower latitudes was sometimes seen as a sign of impending war, plague, or other disasters. The red aurora, rarer and more dramatic than the green, was especially ominous. People would see the red glow in the northern sky and interpret it as fire, or blood, or divine anger. The first scientific attempts to explain the aurora came in the 18th century. Various theories were proposed: that it was sunlight reflecting off polar ice, that it was combustion of gases in the atmosphere, that it was electrical in nature. The electrical theory gained traction, especially after experiments with electricity became popular in scientific circles. But the true mechanism remained elusive. It wasn't until the 20th century that the pieces came together. Understanding required knowledge of atomic structure, of the solar wind, of Earth's magnetic field, of plasma physics. Scientists had to develop instruments that could measure phenomena in the upper atmosphere and in space. Rockets that could carry instruments above the aurora itself. Satellites that could observe the sun and measure the solar wind. Gradually, the picture emerged. The sun is constantly ejecting material, particularly from areas of intense magnetic activity like sunspots. This solar wind varies in intensity. Sometimes there are particularly large eruptions called coronal mass ejections, where billions of tons of solar material are flung into space. When this material reaches Earth, traveling at speeds of hundreds of miles per second, it interacts with our magnetic field. Earth's magnetic field is generated by the motion of molten iron in the planet's outer core. This field extends far into space, creating a region called the magnetosphere that shields us from most solar radiation. When the solar wind encounters this field, most particles are deflected around the Earth. But the field isn't perfectly spherical, it's compressed on the sun-facing side and stretched out into a long tail on the opposite side. And near the poles, the field lines converge, creating funnels that channel some particles downward. These particles, mostly electrons and protons, spiral down the magnetic field lines and enter the upper atmosphere near the poles. When they collide with atmospheric gases, they transfer energy to those gases. The atoms become excited, with electrons jumping to higher energy levels. When the electrons fall back to their normal levels, they release that energy as light. Different gases at different altitudes produce different colors. The result is the aurora. But even knowing all this, even understanding the physics, there's still something mysterious about it. Something that transcends scientific explanation. The aurora is a visible manifestation of our connection to the sun, of the space environment we live in, of the protective magnetic field that makes life on Earth possible. It's a reminder that we're not isolated, not separate from the cosmos. We're part of it, constantly interacting with it, constantly affected by forces we can't directly perceive except through phenomena like this. I've finished my tea, and I set the empty cup aside. The aurora outside has settled into a steady state. Still present, still beautiful, but less dynamic than earlier. This is typical. Aurora displays wax and wane, brighten and fade, sometimes over hours. What I witnessed during the breakup was probably the peak of tonight's activity. From here, it will likely continue at this lower intensity for a while, then gradually fade as the night progresses. But that's fine. I'm not disappointed. What I've already seen exceeds anything I imagined. And now, in this quieter phase, I can simply be with it. Can watch without the sense of urgency that came with the dramatic intensification. Can let my mind drift while the aurora provides a gentle light show. The cabin is perfectly warm now. The wood stove has heated the space thoroughly. I'm comfortable in just my base layers. The fire has burned down to a beautiful bed of coals with occasional flames, exactly the state I want for long, steady heat through the night. My eyes are growing heavy. Not from boredom, how could anyone be bored watching the aurora? But from deep relaxation. The warmth, the comfort, the satisfaction of having witnessed something extraordinary, the simple physical tiredness from a long day of travel and time in the cold. All of it combines to create this profound sense of peace. The cot is calling to me now. Time to prepare for sleep, to let my body rest while the aurora continues its work overhead. Whether I watch it or not, the sun will keep sending particles our way. Earth's magnetic field will keep channeling them toward the poles. The atmosphere will keep glowing. The dance will continue, as it has for billions of years, as it will for billions more. I move slowly toward the cot, my body feeling pleasantly heavy. The kind of heaviness that comes from a day well spent, from experiences that have filled you up, from being exactly where you're supposed to be. I sit on the edge of the cot first, and the old springs creak slightly under my weight. The sound is homey, familiar, the kind of sound that belongs in rustic cabins. Before lying down fully, I tend to the stove one more time. This will be the last load of wood for the night. I choose 2 large pieces, dense and slow burning. They'll provide steady heat for hours, long enough to see me through until morning. The fire has burned down to mostly coals, and I nestle the new pieces into those red-hot coals, watching as they begin to blacken and smoke. Within a minute, flames appear, wrapping around the wood. I adjust the air intake to its lowest setting that will still keep the fire going. Too much air and the wood will burn too fast. Too little and it will smolder inefficiently. But set correctly, these pieces will burn slowly and steadily all night. Satisfied with the fire, I turn down the kerosene lantern until it's barely glowing, just enough light to move around if needed but not enough to interfere with my view of the aurora or my ability to sleep. The cabin dims significantly, and immediately the stars visible through the window seem brighter. I return to the cot and lie back, pulling the sleeping bag over me like a comforter. I don't zip it fully, the cabin is warm enough that full enclosure isn't necessary. But having that weight over me, that layer of warmth, feels perfect. The sleeping bag's fabric is smooth against my skin, and the down filling creates this puffy cocoon that adjusts to my body shape. I arrange the pillows, one under my head, positioned just right to support my neck without lifting my head too high. This allows me to look straight ahead at the window without strain. From this position, lying on my back, the northern sky fills my entire field of vision. It's perfect. Like having a personal theater showing the greatest light display on Earth. The aurora continues outside. It's quieter now than earlier, but still present. Soft green arcs glow and fade, in a rhythm that feels almost like breathing. The pattern is hypnotic. I find my own breathing beginning to match it, unconsciously synchronizing with this cosmic dance. I think about how rare this experience is becoming for most of humanity. Not because the aurora is fading, it will continue as long as the sun shines and Earth has a magnetic field. But because light pollution is spreading, because fewer and fewer places remain dark enough to see the night sky in its full glory. When I was planning this trip, I looked at dark sky maps, satellite images showing light pollution across North America. The populated areas glow brightly, pushing back the darkness for hundreds of miles in every direction. Cities, suburbs, highways, oil fields, agriculture, all of it adding light to the night sky, washing out the stars. But there are still refuges. Alaska's interior is one of them. The Canadian North. Northern Scandinavia. Siberia. places where human population density remains low enough that the night stays dark. And in these places, you can still see what our ancestors saw, the full glory of the night sky, the Milky Way stretching overhead, the aurora dancing when conditions are right. I wonder how long these refuges will last. Development pressures are constant. Resources in the Arctic, minerals, oil, gas, create economic incentives for infrastructure. Climate change is making previously inaccessible areas more accessible. The same warming that's causing so many problems elsewhere is extending growing seasons in the north, melting permafrost, opening new shipping routes. Change is coming to the Arctic, whether we want it or not. But tonight, right now, this place is still wild. Still dark. Still the way it's been for thousands of years. The spruce forest outside has stood largely unchanged in composition for millennia. The cold is the same cold that challenged the first humans who ventured this far north. The aurora is the same aurora they witnessed and wondered at. In this moment, I'm connected to that long human history of living with and in this environment. The indigenous peoples who've called this region home for thousands of years developed sophisticated understandings of how to survive here. They knew when to hunt different animals, where to fish, which plants were edible or useful for medicine, how to predict weather, how to build shelters, how to make clothing from animal skins that would keep them warm even at temperatures far below what I'm experiencing tonight. They developed rich cultures, complex languages, spiritual traditions deeply connected to the land and the cycles of nature. And they watched the aurora, generation after generation. It was part of their world in a way it can never quite be for someone like me, a visitor who will leave in a day or two. They watched it from childhood, saw it countless times, incorporated it into their understanding of the cosmos. The stories they told about the aurora weren't just attempts to explain a natural phenomenon, they were ways of maintaining relationships with the land, with the sky, with the forces that shaped their lives. I feel a deep gratitude for those peoples, for the knowledge they've preserved and shared. The cabin I'm staying in was built by non-indigenous people, but it exists in a landscape that has been home to indigenous communities since time immemorial. Every time I travel in wild places, I try to remember that these lands have histories that extend far beyond the written records of Western civilization. That they have names and meanings and stories that predate anything I could read in a history book. The aurora shifts slightly, drawing my attention back to the window. A new arc has appeared, this one farther to the east than the previous ones. It glows softly, vertical rays extending upward maybe 30 degrees. As I watch, the entire arc seems to brighten and then fade, like a pulse of energy traveling through it. The effect takes maybe 10 seconds from start to finish, and then it settles back to its previous state. These pulses are caused by fluctuations in the solar wind reaching Earth. The stream of particles from the sun isn't perfectly steady, it varies in density and velocity. When a higher density region arrives, more particles funnel into the atmosphere, and the aurora brightens. When a lower density region arrives, the aurora fades. The sun is 93 million miles away, but through the aurora, I'm seeing its influence in real time. That's profound when you stop to think about it. My breathing has become very slow and deep now. In through the nose, feeling my lungs expand fully. Pause. Out through the mouth, feeling my body relax even more. Pause. Then again. This is close to the breathing pattern used in meditation, and it's having a similar effect. My mind is quieting. Thoughts that might normally chase each other in circles are slowing down, spacing out, becoming less insistent. The sounds in the cabin are minimal. The fire in the wood stove is barely crackling now, just the occasional pop as trapped moisture in the wood vaporizes. The slight creak of the building settling in the cold, wood contracting, nails adjusting. My own breathing, almost imperceptible. And from outside, nothing. The profound silence of the boreal forest in winter. That silence is one of the things I'll remember most from this trip. In my normal life, silence barely exists. There's always something: traffic, neighbors, appliances, the hum of electricity in the walls, aircraft passing overhead, sirens in the distance. The modern world is never truly quiet. But here, silence is the default state. Sound is the exception. And in that silence, you can hear things you never notice otherwise. The blood moving through your veins. Your eyelids blinking. Your joints creaking slightly as you shift position. It's like being able to hear your own existence. The aurora continues its slow dance outside. I've been watching it for hours now, and I'm not tired of it. How could I be? It's infinitely variable, constantly changing, never quite the same from one moment to the next. Even in this quieter phase, there's always something new, a brightness appearing here, a ray extending there, the overall structure slowly evolving. But my eyelids are growing very heavy. They close for a moment, then open again to check the aurora. Still there. Still beautiful. Close again, longer this time. Open once more. The lights have shifted, the patterns have changed, but the essence remains the same. I think about sleep, about dreams, about the strange state between waking and sleeping where anything seems possible. I wonder if I'll dream about the aurora. About green lights dancing in an endless sky. About spirits and particles and magnetic fields and ancient peoples watching these same lights thousands of years ago. Sleep is very close now. I can feel it approaching like a tide, gentle but inevitable. My body knows it's time to rest. The day has been long, the journey here, the cold, the excitement of the aurora display, the information and thoughts I've been processing. Everything has combined to create this perfect state for sleep. The last conscious actions are small ones. Adjusting the sleeping bag slightly. Shifting the pillow. Taking one more look at the aurora through the window. Releasing a long, slow breath. And then, surrender. Letting go. Allowing sleep to arrive in its own time, not forcing it, not resisting it, just accepting. The aurora will continue through the night. The forest will stand in its silence. The cold will deepen toward morning. And I will sleep, safe and warm in this small cabin at the edge of the world. The boundary between waking and sleeping has become blurred. I'm not quite sure which state I'm in anymore. My body feels distant, as if it belongs to someone else. The sleeping bag around me could be clouds. The cot beneath me could be floating. Time has lost its meaning. There's only this eternal present moment, stretching out in all directions. Through half-closed eyes, I can still see the aurora. But now it seems dreamlike, not quite real. The green light pulses in rhythm with something, my heartbeat, my breathing, the aurora's own rhythm. All of them at once, perhaps. Everything connected, everything synchronized, everything part of one great cosmic dance. Images begin to drift through my mind. Not quite dreams, not quite thoughts. The aurora transforming into flowing rivers of light. The spruce trees becoming dancers dressed in green robes, swaying to unheard music. The stars pulsing like heartbeats, living things watching the world below. Everything fluid, everything alive, everything connected by invisible threads. I feel myself sinking deeper into the cot, or perhaps the cot is rising to meet me. The sleeping bag's weight is perfect, like being held, like being embraced by something vast and gentle. The pillow cradles my head with exactly the right support. Every part of my body has found its optimal position, and there's no tension anywhere, no discomfort, just complete physical ease. The aurora, I think drowsily, is Earth's way of dreaming. The planet's unconscious mind made visible. The thoughts of a world that's alive in ways we're only beginning to understand. And watching it, being present for it, is like being invited into that dream. Like being allowed to witness the inner life of the planet itself. My breathing has become almost imperceptible. Slow, shallow, the breath of someone deeply relaxed or already sleeping. In, so gentle, barely moving my chest. Pause, lasting several heartbeats. Out, releasing everything, all tension, all thought, all sense of separate self. Pause, existing in that space between breaths where nothing is required and everything is perfect. Occasionally, very faintly, I hear sounds. A distant owl calling from the forest, its voice carrying across the frozen landscape. The sound is so far away that it might be imagined. But it doesn't matter whether it's real or imagined. In this state, the distinction is meaningless. The owl is both real and dreamed, both outside and inside, both sound and silence. The fire in the wood stove has burned down to almost nothing. Just the faintest glow of coals, barely providing light but still radiating a steady warmth. The cabin will stay comfortable through the night. The fire doesn't need tending anymore. It will burn slowly, gradually cooling, but maintaining enough heat until morning. And even if it goes out completely, the cabin is well insulated, the cold won't penetrate quickly. There's no danger, no concern, nothing that requires attention or action. Through the window, the aurora continues. Softer now, gentler. The brilliant greens have faded to pastels, but the lights remain. Arcs and glows that pulse so slowly they seem almost static. But they're still there, still dancing their ancient dance. And I'm aware of them on some level, even as consciousness fades. The stars will slowly across the sky, following their eternal paths. Polaris remains fixed in the north, the one point that doesn't move as Earth rotates beneath it. The constellations circle around it, appearing to rotate counterclockwise when viewed from above the North Pole. But the motion is so slow that it's imperceptible from moment to moment. You have to watch for hours to see the change. Or you can simply know it's happening, trust the process, let the cosmos do its work. My thoughts, such as they are, have become very simple. Not complex ideas or narratives anymore, just sensations. Impressions. The warmth around me. The softness beneath me. The gentle green glow from the window. The profound silence that's almost like a sound itself. Everything reduced to its essence, stripped of complexity, returned to a basic state of pure experience. Sleep is no longer approaching. Sleep is here. I'm in it, moving through its depths like diving into dark water. Layers of consciousness falling away. First the awareness of the cabin, of the aurora, of the external world. Then the awareness of my body, of physical sensation. Then the awareness of thought itself. Descending through levels, each one darker and quieter than the last. Somewhere in the depths of this sleep, dreams will come. But they'll be strange dreams, not like normal ones. Dreams colored by the aurora, by the cold, by the immense silence of the boreal forest. Dreams of light and ice and ancient forces. Dreams of spirits dancing across the sky, of particles and fields, of the sun reaching out across space to touch the earth. Dreams that blend science and spirituality, fact and myth, observation and imagination. But those dreams are still ahead. Right now, there's just this descent. This gentle sinking. This letting go of everything that isn't absolutely essential. And what remains when everything else falls away? Just being. Just existence itself. Just the simple fact of presence, of awareness, reduced to its most fundamental form. The aurora glows outside, patient and eternal. It doesn't need an audience. It existed long before any human watched it, and it will exist long after the last human is gone. It's Earth's conversation with the sun, mediated by magnetic fields and atmospheric gases, playing out in a region of space where human concepts like air and vacuum blur together. It's one of the universe's many voices, and tonight, for a little while, I was able to listen. My last semi-conscious thought is gratitude. For this place. For this experience. For the chance to witness something so ancient and so eternal. For the warmth of the cabin and the cold of the night. For the silence that lets you hear the cosmos. For the indigenous peoples who've shared their stories and their wisdom. For the scientists who've worked to understand the mechanisms. For the aurora itself, for the sun and the earth and the magnetic field and the atoms in the upper atmosphere. For all of it, all of this vast interconnected system that makes moments like this possible. And then even gratitude fades, and there's just sleep. Deep, peaceful, complete sleep. The aurora continues its dance above the cabin, painting the sky with colors older than human memory. The stars shine with their ancient light, photons that began their journey years or decades or centuries ago, finally reaching this frozen corner of Earth. The forest stands in patient silence, the spruce trees enduring another Arctic night, as they've endured millions before. And inside the cabin, warmed by slowly fading coals, a human sleeps. Dreaming dreams colored in green. Breathing in rhythm with invisible cosmic forces. Part of this landscape, this night, this moment. A brief spark of consciousness in the vastness of space and time. But connected to it all, part of the great whole, one small expression of the universe experiencing itself. The night deepens. Hours pass unmarked. The aurora slowly fades as Earth rotates, as the solar wind ebbs, as the particles streaming from the sun find their way around the planet's magnetic field rather than through it. By dawn, the lights will be gone, replaced by the pale brightness of the Arctic day. But that's hours away yet. For now, there's only night, and stars, and the last traces of aurora, and profound peace. Sleep continues, unbroken and restful. The body relaxes completely, muscles releasing all tension, breath slowing to the gentle rhythm of deep rest. The mind quiets, thoughts dissolving like aurora lights at dawn. Everything settles into stillness, into silence, into perfect rest. Under the aurora. In the heart of Alaska. At the top of the world. Where the lights dance and the silence speaks and all is well. All is well.